عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله، وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. أما بعد. Brothers and sisters in Islam, one of the most difficult tasks that anyone could be faced with in this life is to bury the woman that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made responsible for your existence. By far the most difficult thing, aside from burying a child of your own that you gave birth to, your spouse gave birth to, but to bury the woman that was responsible, part and parcel responsible for your existence. The woman who was burdened with carrying you in difficulty on top of difficulty, as Allah describes in the Quran, until she delivered you safely into this world, only to be confronted with a plethora of disappointments and pain. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْنِ حملته أمه وهنا على وهن وفصاله في عامين أن اشكر لي ولوالديك إلي المصير. Allah said, and we have enjoined on man to be dutiful to his parents. We have enjoined on man to be dutiful to his parents. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes the discussion in a different direction. He said his mother carried him in difficulty on top of difficulty. Not the father. He started off with, and we have enjoined on man to be dutiful to his parents. Then he went in a different direction with his discussion. He said, putting emphasis on the one who carried most of the load, who carried majority of the load of the burden. He said, حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ وَهْنًا عَلَى وَهْنٍ. His mother carried him in difficulty on top of difficulty. وَفِصَالُهُ فِي عَامَيْنِ. And his breastfeeding period was a total of 2 years. أَنِشْكُرْ لِي وَلِوَالِدَيْكَ إِلَيَّ الْمَصِيرُ. Be grateful to me and to your 2 parents, and to me is your final return. Allah mentions in another verse in the Quran, وَوَصَيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ إِحْسَانًا. And we have enjoined upon man to be dutiful to his 2 parents. حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ كُرْهًا وَوَضَعَتْهُ كُرْهًا. Allah said that we have enjoined on man to be dutiful to his 2 parents. His mother carried him in difficulty. حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ كُرْهًا. His mother carried him in difficulty. وَوَضَعَتْهُ كُرْهًا. And she delivered him in difficulty. As men, we would never know what it feels like to carry a child, carry another living, breathing, human being inside of our bodies. We will never know what that feels like. We will never know what it feels like not to be able to sleep on your back, not to be able to sleep on your stomach, not to be able to sleep on your side, to sit up in an upright position to try to find some level of comfort because you are carrying a child of someone, in many instances in today's time, that doesn't even deserve the title of father. Think about women who are carrying children all by themselves, going through this entire process by themselves. While the father is out cheating with another woman, while the father is incarcerated in jail somewhere for serving his own agenda instead of the agenda of his entire family. Right? We said, I had to feed my family. No, you were trying to feed yourself. This was an agenda that was self-driven, not driven by your family, because even when you're incarcerated, your family is still being provided for. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ar-Razzaq. Allah is the provider. You are not the provider. You are just a facilitator to your family, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for you to have. But we get this God complex, I got to take care of my family. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed us in the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he left his wife and his child. Ibrahim, he left his wife Hajar and Ismail in the valley of Mecca with nothing. No vegetation, no fruits, no water, just a water skin and a few dates. And as he's walking away, Hajar asked him, Aina tadhhab ya Ibrahim? Where are you going, Ibrahim? He couldn't even turn around and look at his family. While today you have men that walk away from their family, look his wife right in the eye and walk away from her. Ibrahim couldn't even turn around and look at his wife. She said, Aina tadhhab Ibrahim? Where are you going? You're going to leave us here with nothing. And then she asked him, Allahu amraka bihada? Did Allah command you to do this? And Ibrahim nodded in approval. She said, Idhab idhan, go then, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُضَيِّعْنَا, because Allah will never abandon us. These were people who understood their rightful place in this world and gave God his rightful place in our lives. Gave God his rightful place in our lives. While today we take this God complex mentality, I have to provide for my family. But what happens when you go to jail? Your family is still being provided for. That's proof that you don't provide. You just facilitate. Understand your role and understand the role of God in your life. But the Quran captures very briefly the pain that a woman experiences during this time of childbirth. Allah says, حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ كُرَهَا وَوَضَعَتْهُ كُرَهَا. She carried him in difficulty and delivered him safely into the world in difficulty. Women have to take what is called an epidural, a tranquilizer that they use on animals, in her back to numb her from the waist down so that she could deliver you into this world. Some of whom never recover from this. Some women, even from their first childbirth, their back is never the same. Their body is never the same. To deliver you, the child, into this world, and we turn around, wallah al-azim, and we use the same tongue, the same faculties to disrespect a woman that went through difficulty, to deliver us safely into this world. Allahu musta'an. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala captures very briefly in the story of Maryam the pain that a woman experiences going through this process of childbirth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about Maryam, فَأَجَاءَهَا الْمَخَاضُ إِلَى جِذْعِ النَّخْلَةِ قَالَتْ يَا لَيْتَنِي مِتُّ قَبْلَ هَذَا وَكُنْتُ نَسْيًا مَنْسِيًّا. And the pain of childbirth drove her to the trunk of a date palm tree. And she said, يَا لَيْتَنِي مِتُّ قَبْلَ هَذَا. I wish I had died before this. وَكُنْتُ نَسْيًا مَنْسِيًّا. And I had been a thing forgotten about. A thing never even thought about. There's the pain of childbirth, coupled with the pain that she was going to have to experience bringing a child into the world without a father. Giving life, brothers and sisters, to someone or something in any capacity has a paradoxical dynamic attached to it, in that the life that you give to something or someone is equivalent to the life or the energy that will be taken from you in the process. When you give life to someone or something, the amount of energy that you put into giving life to that thing is the same amount of energy that will be taken from that person in the event of your demise. And this is why when people who invest so much of their time and their energy in other people and things, they feel like they are nothing when that thing disappoints them and leaves them. Think about a woman who invests her entire life into a man, only to have that man cheat on her and leave her. She feels like she is depleted. She has nothing else to offer the world because she invested everything of herself into that person. And this is because our role as human beings is not to give life, but to be the vehicle through which life flourishes. Our job is not to give life. Our job is to be the vehicle through which life flourishes on any level. My job is not to bring you into this world. My job is not to give you life, whether it is mentally, psychologically, physically. My job is to be the vehicle. I am to empower you to be the vehicle through which life flourishes. As the Prophet ﷺ, he said, أَنَا قَاسِمٌ وَاللَّهُ هُوَ الْمُعْتِي. That I am only the distributor, but Allah is the real giver. أَنَا قَاسِمٌ وَاللَّهُ هُوَ الْمُعْتِي. I only distribute, but Allah is the real giver. Meaning, I do not distribute anything to my companions by my own law, by my own word. I give you on command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from a higher authority. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or Ibn Qayyim, rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned in a very beautiful passage, he said, قُلُوبَ ibn Adam آنِيَةَ اللَّهِ فِي أَرْضِهِ. That the hearts of the children of Adam are the vessels of Allah on the earth. This is the way that Allah conveys His mercy to other human beings, by touching your heart, by changing your heart to convey mercy to another human being. Allah uses you. Our hearts now become the vessels through which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives life. Wallah al-Azim, one word come out of your mouth to a person can change their entire lives. And it wasn't you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala divinely inspired you to utter those words. So you were the vehicle. You were not the one who made them. See, we get in this God complex here again, and we say, you would have been nothing without me. No, I would have been nothing without God. Because you were only the one that facilitated to me what God already had planned for me. Don't begin to take on God's role. We say, you would have been nothing without me. No, I would have been everything without you, because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted good for me, He would have conveyed that good to me, whether through you or through you or through you. I would have still gotten it. Don't put yourself in the position of God. We are the vehicles through which life flourishes. We are not the ones to give life to anyone. But this is why people feel depleted when that thing disappoints them, that person disappoints them or upsets them, because you've invested too much of yourself in a person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know Him as Al-Muhyi wal-Mumit. He is the giver of life and the giver of death. Two omnipotent qualities that have a very powerful and profound impact on the human psyche. When you understand that God is the giver of life and the giver of death, and you understand that concept, that has a very profound impact on your psyche as a human being. The pain that a woman experiences when she delivers a child into the world is transferred over to the child in the event of her demise. Meaning the same pain that a woman experiences when she delivers you is the same pain that you experience when Allah delivers her from this earth and takes her back. The same pain. It's transferred over to you as a human being. And this is why there's a saying that the death of a beloved is an amputation. Losing a loved one is like losing a part of your body. The same pain that the mother experienced when she delivered you is the same pain, or even a more intense pain, that you experience when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls her back. Thus we lose a part of ourselves in life and in death. We lose a part of ourselves in life and in death. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he was raised by his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, after the death of his mother, Amina bint Wahab. And her death wasn't as nearly as impactful on him or during his adolescence as it was in his adult life, as children usually don't understand the process of death and the implications of death until they get older and are mature enough to understand what death represents, and that is the soul's transition from this human experience to another dimension that we know in Islam as the barzakh, life in the grave. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَهُمْ عَنِ الْآخِرَةِ هُمْ غَافِلُونَ. The only thing that they know is the outward appearance of this life, but as it relates to what is beyond this experience that we're having, hum ghafilun, that we're completely heedless. We have no knowledge and no understanding of what happens beyond the physical world that we see in front of us. On the authority of Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu anhuma, who said, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لما أقبل من غزوة تبوك واعتمر فلما هبط من ثنية غصفان أمر أصحابه أن استندوا إلى العقبة حتى أرجع إليهم، فذهب صلى الله عليه وسلم فنزل على قبر أمه فناجى ربه طويلا ثم إنه بكى فبكى فاشتد بكاؤه وبكى هؤلاء أصحابه لبكائه وقالوا ما بكى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بهذا المكان إلا وقد أحدث الله في أمته شيئا لا تطيقه. That Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu anhuma, he said that when the Prophet ﷺ and his companions were returning back from the battle of Tabuk, they stopped at an area called Ghasfan, and he told his companions to wait here. And he began to walk ahead of them by himself. And he got down into a place that was a grave, that appeared to be a grave, and he began to raise his hands and call on his Lord for a long period of time. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he began to cry. فَاشْتَدَّ بُكَاؤُهُ, and his cry became profuse. His cry became loud, that even his companions, who were such a distance from him, began to hear him cry. And they began crying because they heard him crying. This is the relationship that the Sahaba, they didn't even know why he was crying. But the fact that he was crying, it upset them, and they began to cry. So you can imagine how loud it was. You can imagine the sound. Wallah al-Azim, when you hear someone crying, whether it's in Ramadan, in Salat al-Taraweeh, when the Imam is reciting and you hear someone just bust out crying, it begins to affect everyone in the rank. There's no way as a human being who is in tune with his conscious, his higher level of consciousness, can hear someone cry profusely and not be affected by it. They begin to cry because the Prophet ﷺ cried. And they said, perhaps something, Allah has revealed something about this ummah that he can't handle. That's why he's crying. فَلَمَّا بَكَى هَؤُلَاء قام النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فرجع إليهم فقال ما يبكيكم. When the Prophet ﷺ finished, he put his hands down, he got up, and he walked back towards his companions. And he said to them, why are you crying? Why are you guys crying? قالوا يا نبي الله بكينا لبكائك فقلنا لعله أحدث في أمتك شيئا لا تطيقه. The Sahaba said to the Prophet ﷺ, we cried because we heard you crying, And we said that perhaps Allah has revealed something about this ummah that you can't handle, and that's why you're crying. And the Prophet ﷺ said, La, no, that's not why I'm crying. He said, Lakin nazaltu ala qabri ummi. He said, no, but I got down into the grave of my mother. فَسَأَلْتُ اللَّهَ جَلَّ وَعَلَى أَنْ يَأْذَنْ لِي فِي شَفَاعَتِهَا. He said, and I asked Allah to let me intercede for my mother. Yawm al-Qiyamah. Let me intercede for my mother. This is a normal behavior with a child and his mother. There's no relationship like a boy and his mother. That maternal relationship between a woman and her son, there's no relationship on the face of the earth like it. You can see that relationship manifest in the story of Musa alayhi salam, when Allah tasked his mother with putting him into a basket and throwing him into the Nile River, only on the promise of Allah to return him back. That's all she had, was Allah's promise. That's it. Think about you putting your child in the Nile River and letting your child go on the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the promise of Allah to return him to you. She almost gave him to Fir'aun out of fear, as Allah says, that if it wasn't for the fact that we had sent tranquility to her heart and made her heart firm, she would have exposed him. It's the relationship between a mother and son. The Prophet ﷺ said that I got down in the grave of my mother, وَسَأَلْتُ اللَّهَ, and I asked Allah, أَسْتَأْذَنْتُ اللَّهَ فِي شَفَاعَتِهَا, and I asked Allah to give me permission to intercede for my mother Yawm al-Qiyamah. In another narration, he said, استأذنت الله في استغفار أمي, and I asked Allah permission to seek forgiveness for my mother يوم القيامة فأبى الله أن يأذن لي فرحمتها. He said, but Allah refused and did not grant me permission to seek intercession for my mother. He said, so the crying that you saw me doing was my mercy for my mother. Rahimtuha. I was merciful to my mother. I began to shed tears. I began to cry over my mother. He said, وَهِيَ أُمِّي, this is my mother. فَبَكِيتُ ثُمَّ جَاءَنِي جِبْرِيلٌ فَقَالَ وَمَا كَانَ اسْتِغْفَارُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ لِأَبِيهِ إِلَّا عَنْ مَوْعِدَةٍ وَعَدَهَا اللَّهُ إِيَّاهُ فَلَمَّا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ أَنَّهُ عَدُوٌّ لِلَّهِ تَبَرَّأَ مِنْهُ فَتَبَرَّأْ أَنْتَ يَا مُحَمَّدْ مِنْ أُمِّكَ كَمَا تَبَرَّأَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ مِنْ أَبِيهِ فَرَحِمْتُهَا وَهِيَ أُمِّي. The Prophet ﷺ said that in that moment, Jibreel came to me with a verse from the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and the forgiveness, the seeking of forgiveness that Allah gave to Ibrahim was only for a short span of time. Allah gave Ibrahim permission to seek forgiveness for his father only as a promise from Allah for a short period of time. But when it became clear to Ibrahim that his father was an enemy to God, Ibrahim freed himself from his father. And Jibreel said, you, O Muhammad, free yourself from your mother like Ibrahim freed himself from his father. And the Prophet ﷺ said, فَرَحِمْتُهَا, I was merciful to her. The only thing that I could do was cry. I couldn't seek forgiveness for her. I couldn't ask Allah to let me intercede for her. The only thing that I could do was cry. SubhanAllah. And that was the mercy that you saw. Many times we get caught up in Muhammad, the messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we forget about Muhammad, the man, Muhammad, the human. The mercy he expressed towards his mother through his tears exposes us to a side of him that we rarely hear about in our journey to a deeper understanding of Islam. You rarely, seldom do you hear. For many of you here, this might be the first time you've ever heard this hadith in your entire life as a Muslim. This is a side of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that we rarely see. In another narration, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said to the Sahaba, he said, إن القبر الذي رأيتموني أناجيه قبر آمنة بنت وهب وإني استأذنت ربي في زيارتها فأذن لي ثم استأذنته في استغفار لها فلم يأذن لي فأخذني ما يأخذ الولد لوالده من الرأفة فذلك الذي أبكاني. The Prophet ﷺ said that indeed the grave that you saw me standing next to was the grave of Amina bint Wahab, my mother, my biological mother. He said, I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for permission to visit the grave of my mother, and he gave me permission. He said, then I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for permission to seek forgiveness for my mother, And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refused to give me permission to do so. He said, so I was overcome with the same level of disappointment and frustration and love for my mother like any human being would be for their mother. فَأَخَذَنِي مَا يَأْخُذُ الْوَلَدِ لِوَالِدِهِ. I was overcome with the emotions that any human being would be overcome with for their parent. He said, and that is what caused me to cry. And the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they said, فَمَا رَأَيْتُ سَاعَةً أَكْثَرَ بُكَاءٍ مِنْ تِلْكَ السَّاعَةِ. The Sahaba said, we never saw as many tears shed in that moment. We never saw tears shed in abundance like that, like we did during that moment. The Prophet ﷺ is crying, the Sahaba are crying, all over the Prophet ﷺ not being given permission by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to seek forgiveness for his mother. And for many of us who converted to Islam, the only thing that is standing between our parents' eternity in the hellfire and Jannah is the fact that they haven't died yet. The fact that they haven't died yet. That's the only thing that is standing in between many of our parents from spending eternity in hell, is the fact that they haven't died yet. While we go to sleep every single night, okay, with the fact that our parents are disbelievers, that our parents have no whatsoever connection to God, and we go to sleep every night, okay with that. We come around our family members, we laugh and we joke and we say nothing about Islam to them. This is unacceptable. And so you can see the pain of the Prophet ﷺ, and we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide our parents to Islam, and for those of our parents that are Muslim, we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive them and grant them Jannatul Firdaus al-A'la bi rahmatihi subhanahu wa ta'ala. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Azim wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bima ja'a fihi min al-ayati wa dhikri al-hakim. Aqulu ma tasma'un astaghfirullah li wa lakum wa li sa'ir al-mu'minin min kulli dhanb فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له إقرارا به وتوحيدا. وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صراط منيرا. أما بعد. There was another woman in the life of the Prophet ﷺ who was responsible for many of the exemplary qualities that we have fallen in love with. A woman who helped nurture him in an extended, non-conventional family structure. A mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he would spend a great portion of his life showing gratitude to her for. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, أَلَمْ يَجِدْكَ يَتِيمًا فَآوَى وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًّا فَهَدَى وَوَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَى. Allah reminded the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam of his past. He said, أَلَمْ يَجِدْكَ يَتِيمًا فَآوَى. Didn't we find you as an orphan and we gave you shelter? We gave you refuge. We gave you a place to live. We gave you people to look after you and to nurture you until you became the individual that you became. We don't get to choose who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala entrusts with our upbringing. Many of us as children, we look back on the younger adolescent years of our lives and we abhor some of the things that we experience in our households. But what does not challenge you will not change you. If it doesn't challenge you, it's not going to change you. Many of us would not be the individuals that we are today had it not been for the upbringing that we had. And provided many of our parents didn't know or didn't come, as children don't come with a manual. We don't come out the wombs of our mother with a booklet. Hey, this is how you raise this particular kid. So we have to learn how to figure it out. Some parents figure it out. Some parents don't. But at the end of the day, as human beings, we would not be the people that we are today had it not been for our upbringing. And I, myself, had a very difficult upbringing, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I would not be the individual that I was today had it not been for the things that I went through in my life. And I wouldn't change anything about it. If I had to go back and do it all over again, I would have done it all over again the same exact way. Because that is the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended for me to go through those trials and tribulations and challenges to become the individual that I am today. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He entrusts people with our upbringing. However, the homes in which we are raised are either رَوْضَةٌ مِّن رِيَاضِ الْجَنَّةِ أَوْ حُفْرَةٌ مِّن حُفْرِ النَّارِ. But it is important for parents to understand that the homes that you are raising these children in can either be a garden from the gardens of Jannah or can be a pitfall from the pits of the hellfire. Your choice. We have a responsibility with our children. The Prophet ﷺ said, كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. That all of you are shepherds and all of you are responsible for your flock. وَرَجُلٌ رَاعٍ وَمَسْئُولٌ عَنْ أَهْلِ بَيْتِهِ. That a man is a shepherd and you are responsible for your household. You don't get to run your house the way that you want because you feel like, I am the man. I make the rules. Allah makes the rules. You just enforce them. You don't make the rules. Allah makes the rules. Above everyone who thinks that they are authority is an authority greater than him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are not the authority. We lay the rules down based upon the rules that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, and we enforce those rules. But the rule maker, the authority is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Taking care of an extended family member in Islam warrants or yields a great virtue. The Prophet ﷺ was not raised by his biological parents. He was raised by his grandfather and then by an uncle and his aunt and raised in a home with cousins. This is something that is reminiscent many of our lives. This is something that many of us are in charge or entrusted with now. Sometimes we have a sister that is deceased, or a sister on drugs, or this one or that one, and we have to take in children. We didn't plan it out that way, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala entrusted you with raising these particular children that are under your auspices. The Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, أَنَا وَكَافِلُ الْيَتِيمِ فِي الْجَنَّةِ كَهَاتَيْنِ وَأَشَارَ بِالسَّبَّابَ وَالْوُسْطَى وَفَرَّقَ بَيْنَهُمَا. The Prophet ﷺ said, me and the one who takes care of an orphan will be like this in Jannah. And then he separated his fingers. We'll be like this in Jannah. Sometimes things happen in our family structures. We didn't plan for it. But we step in and we help out and we take care of children that are not necessarily our own. But that is something that Allah has entrusted you with. It's an amanah. So what do you think about a woman who cared for the greatest orphan that this world has ever seen? The woman that I am referring to is none other than Fatima bint Asad, the wife of Abu Talib, the mother of Ali and Ja'far and the rest of their children. This woman, the Prophet ﷺ was so fond of her that he named his youngest daughter after her, Fatima bint Muhammad. She was given the name Fatima after Fatima bint Asad, the mother of Ali radiallahu anhu. This was the youngest daughter of the Prophet ﷺ. He even gave her the nickname Abiha. You are your father's mother. Meaning you treat me like my mother, Fatima bint Asad, used to treat me. You care for me like my mother used to care for me. Many of us, if you have daughters or you have a daughter, usually that father and daughter relationship works out like that. The daughter treats you like your wife would usually treat you. She's very nurturing, very caring about you. And the Prophet ﷺ, he called his youngest daughter Fatima, Abiha. You are your father's mother. Meaning you treat me and you care for me just like my mother used to care for me. And we know his mother's name was Amina, but he was referring to another mother. And this mother he was referring to was Fatima bint Asad. Because in the absence of Khadija, Fatima cared for the Prophet ﷺ the same way that Fatima bint Asad cared for him. And her death had the same impact, if not a greater impact on him as the death of his own biological mother. Anas radiallahu anhu, he said, لما ماتت فاطمة بنت أسد ابن هشام ابن هاشم علي دخل عليها النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فجلس عند رأسها فقال رحمك الله يا أمي كنت بعد أمي تجوعين وتشبعيني وتعرين وتكسيني وتمنعين نفسك طيبا يعني من الطعام بذلك وجه الله والدار الآخرة. The Prophet ﷺ entered into the room when Fatima bint Asad was on her deathbed. This was the second mother in his life that he is losing. Many of us lose one mother in a lifetime, but here's a man who had to go through that pain twice. Twice. Can you imagine the pain of losing a biological mother and then another mother that cared for you, losing both of them in your lifetime? Excruciating pain. But this is what makes us stronger. Allah does not test us with these things to break us. Some people right now disbelieve in God because they say, if God exists, why did he take my mother? Questioning God about what he does. The Prophet ﷺ said, لِلَّهِ مَا أَعْطَى وَلِلَّهِ مَا أَخَذ. To Allah belongs what he gives, and to Allah belongs what he takes. It all belongs to him. It all belongs to him. None of it belongs to you. Our parents are given to us on loan. Our children are given to us on loan from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They don't belong to you. He entered upon Fatima bint Asad while she was on her deathbed. And when he entered upon her, he sat at her head and put her head in his lap. And he said, Rahimakillah, may Allah have mercy upon you, ya ummi, oh my mother. And this is one of the many evidences in Islam that prove that if a child is being raised by a person that is not their biological parent, it is permissible for them to refer to them as daddy or mommy or ummi or abi or baba or mama, even though they are not your biological. Because that helps to build a rapport between the child and that parent. As long as the child knows that that parent is not the biological, there's nothing haram about the child referring to the woman as their mother or the child referring to the man as their father. The Prophet ﷺ referred to Fatima bint Asad as his mother. This shows a connection, an ilaqa. This connection between the human beings. I'm amazed when some parents, they have stepchildren in the home. And they refer to their stepchildren as, oh, those are my stepchildren. And they refer to their biological children, oh no, those are my children, those are my stepchildren. La ilaha illallah. How is the child ever going to bond with you when you constantly refer to the child as my stepchildren? You make a distinction between the children. And it doesn't matter whether they're your stepchildren or your biological children. The end result for you is still the same. If you oppress them, you're going to be punished. And if you treat them with honor and carry out the amana that Allah gave you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will favor you. It doesn't matter the title that you give them. The end result is still the same. He said, oh my mother, he said, may Allah have mercy upon you. He said that after my mother's death, you used to care for me, and you would be hungry while I was full. Tujur'ina wa tashbi'ini. That you were hungry while you made sure that I was full. This is the mother. She doesn't have much. She gets paid. She goes out. She buys the children Jordans, buys them phone posits, buys them all these fancy clothes and sneakers, and she has nothing left for herself. Pays the bill, pays the rent, pays this, pays that, and then buys the children what they want, and she has nothing left for herself. This all comes with the territory. And Allah, if she's a single mother. Because she's carrying the weight all by herself while the man gets to go out and enjoy what the world has to offer. More women, more money, more jobs. You get to do what you want to do and never have to worry about taking care of your children. MashaAllah tabarakallah. There should be a law against calling a person like this a father. How do you get to enjoy life and do nothing for the child and still carry the title, I am the child's father? How? You've never done anything for the child. How do you get to still claim the title of father when you've done nothing for the child? SubhanAllah. She said that you would be hungry while you made sure I was full. He said, Ta'arina wa taksini, that you were unclothed while you made sure I had clothes. And you used to deny yourself the best of foods while making sure I had the best of foods. And you desired nothing from that except the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have many parents who are foster parents who take in children today for money. Totally for a paycheck. You take in children. You go and exploit a system that we have here in America. We have a system where children who are abused, children who are abandoned, children whose parents don't deserve to have them underneath their care. They're put into a system. And that system is almost like an auctioning block, because now people who have a disease in their heart can go and choose this child, this child, this child, and make money off of it. And they don't even care about the well-being of the child. They don't care about whether or not this child comes out of their home, the best of the best that they can actually be. It's purely about a paycheck. At the end of the month, you receive a check, 3 different checks for 3 different children that you take care of, most of whom you don't spend a dime on them. You take the check money and you go and you spend it on whatever you want to spend it on, while your children wear hand-me-down thrift shop clothes. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. This is the system that we live in. These are orphans. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our religion tells us that if we honor these children, then we will be in Jannah with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam like this. And in today's society, we exploit these children, we take advantage of these children. He said nothing from that except the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we have stepchildren, and we have children that belong to other siblings of ours, our nieces, nephews, grandchildren, that we have taken it upon ourselves to raise them in our homes, we should desire nothing except the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't want any money from it. Even if money comes as a result of that, I still am not doing it for that purpose. I'm doing it totally for the purpose of getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, using this as a vehicle for me to get to Jannah. This is my passage will begin to shroud her in his cloak. ثم دعا النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أسامة بن زيد وأبا أيوب الأنصاري وعمر بن الخطاب وغلاما يحفرون قبرها. Then the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم called Usama bin Zayd, Umar bin al-Khattab, and Abu Ayyub al-Ansari to come and dig her grave. Dig her grave. فلما بلغوا اللحد حفره صلى الله عليه وسلم بيده. And when they got down to the lahd, which is you dig down and then you dig in, when they got to the lahd, the compartment inside the grave where the body goes, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم got down in the grave and began to dig it out with his own hands صلى الله عليه وسلم. فلما فرغ دخل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فاتجع فيه فقال الله الذي يحيي ويميت وهو الحي الذي لا يموت اغفر لأمي فاطمة بنت أسد ولقنها حجتها ووسع عليها مدخلها بحق نبيك والأنبياء الذين قبلك فإنك أرحم الراحمين وكبر عليها 4 وأدخلها اللحد وهو وعباس وأبو بكر الصديق رضي الله تعالى عنهم أجمعين. When the Prophet ﷺ finished digging out the lahd with his own hands, he got down in the grave and he laid in the grave himself. And then he commanded for her body to be put down into that grave. But before then, he made dua for her. Listen to what he said for his mother. He said, "Oh Allah." He said, "Oh Allah, you are the one who gives life and death." Here again, understanding the power of these 2 qualities. He acknowledged at that very moment, when there's a death in our family, the first thing that we should acknowledge is that Allah is the giver of life and death. First thing. He said, Allahumma, he said, Allahu alladhi yuhyi wa yumeet. Allah is the one who gives life and gives death. وَهُوَ الْحَيِّ الَّذِي لَا يَمُوتُ. And he is the one who is ever living and never dies. Listen to the wording. He's affirming his understanding of life and death. He said, اغفر لأمي فاطمة بنت أسد. He said, forgive my mother, Fatima bint Asad. He said, وَلَقِّنَهَا حُجَّتَهَا. And give her the ability to utter La ilaha illallah. Give her the ability to utter those comments when the angels come to her in her grave, that she can answer those questions correctly. وَوَسِّعْ عَلَيْهَا مُدْخَلَهَا. And make her grave spacious for her. بِحَقِّ نَبِيِّكَ. Based upon the right of your prophet and the prophets who came before me. فَإِنَّكَ أَرْحَمَ الرَّاحِمِينَ. For indeed you are the most merciful of those who have mercy. And he pronounced the takbir 4 times over her and prayed over her, and he entered her body into the grave, him along with his uncle Abbas and his best friend Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu. There's no prophet whose life has been so precisely recorded and documented in the history of Islam, so eloquently articulated and intimately detailed than the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This allows us to humanize him, to see him as a human being, so his life becomes more humanly relatable. And when he was asked, why did he do this in conclusion? He was asked, why did you do all of this? Why did you give her your cloak to wear? Why did you get down in the grave and make dua? Why did you do all of this? The Prophet ﷺ said, I got down فَتَجَعْتُ مَعَهَا فِي قَبْرِهَا لِيُخَفِّفْ عَنْهَا مِنْ ضَغْطَةِ الْقَبْرِ فإنها كانت من أحسن الناس فإنها كانت من أحسن خلق الله إلي صنعا بعد أبي طالب. He said, I got down in the grave and I laid in the grave and I made dua for her so that perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would lighten her punishment, would lighten anything that was to come to her in her grave. He said, because I swear by Allah, she was the best person on the face of this earth after my uncle Abu Talib. She treated me the best. Children, they never forget. When you do good to a child in their childhood, they will never forget you for the rest of their lives. I, as an adult today, I remember teachers, I remember people in my neighborhood who said things to me that no one else said to me. I remember to this day, 30, 40 years later, I still remember it. And these are the people that are going to make dua for you. The last thing that you want is to say something disparaging to a child or say something disrespectful to a child, and that's one less person that you have to make dua for you when you're gone. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have not wronged any child ever in our life, and if we have, that we make amends with that child before we depart from this world. You need more people to make dua for you than you need people making dua against you. The last thing you want is for someone, because of something you said to them, something you did to them, to make dua against you while you are in your grave. Think about all of the children that lived in homes with step-parents and grandparents and uncles and aunts who got treated so badly that they can't wait until you die so they can make dua against you. La ilaha illallah. These children are an amana, brothers and sisters. Honor the amana that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى وعفاف والغنى. اللهم تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على عبدك ورسولك محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله